Hi, I'm Chance,
And I'm Sarah Catherine,
and this is Conservation Connection.
presented by Last Chance Endeavors.
We run a wildlife education nonprofit focused on connecting students to their environment.
Each week here on Conservation Connection, we do just that by introducing you to the groundbreaking science and conservation work that's happening every day around the country.
We talk to professionals in the world of conservation science and wildlife management and ask them about their career,
Their current projects,
their wild and crazy stories from the field,
and everything in between.
Join us each week to discover just how these dedicated people are working to protect our planet. Alrighty guys, welcome to another episode of Conservation Connection. We are here at the Nature Now Film Festival in Columbus, Georgia. Very excited to be recording right here where we live. We are in the beating heart of the film festival right now in the production room. So if you're listening and you hear some sounds that you don't usually hear, that's because we are right in the thick of it. So we're very excited today to be sitting down with Benjamin Dimmitt. He is a landscape photographer. He's from Florida, and he's got a really cool show going on here in Columbus right now.
Yeah, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
We are very happy that you had time to join us. So why don't you just go ahead and tell us a little bit about the show that you have here in Columbus?
It's an exhibit of 10 black and white landscape photographs taken in the Chassahowitzka National Wildlife Refuge on the Gulf Coast of Florida, about 70 miles north of Tampa. It's a part of the Florida Gulf Coast where there are no beaches. So as the sea levels have risen over the last 10 plus years, or in reality, 4,000 years, the climate change related sea level rise has pushed saltwater back up into freshwater estuaries. And the impact that that has had is all the flora has died from saltwater poisoning. And the only trees remaining are the most salt tolerant, which are palm trees, oddly enough. They're the last to go in this ecosystem. And the saltwater intrusion has been helped by excessive pumping from the reservoirs or aquifers that the state has permitted. And when you start to pull the fresh water out of the aquifer and sell it to big businesses, then the Gulf water comes in even faster.
So it's sort of this combination of sea levels are rising, which is pushing saltwater further and further into estuarine systems, and we're removing freshwater out of the equation, which allows more of the saltwater to come in and take its place, right? So it's kind of this two-pronged problem. One is a relatively short-term human-caused problem, and the other is a much longer-term human-sped-up problem.
Yes, exactly.
So you went out and took photographs to document the effects of this, right?
Yes, I've been photographing there since the late 80s. And the way I work, and a lot of other fine art photographers work, is to start a project and work on it for a period of time. And back in 2004, I said to myself, this place seems a little vulnerable here. And I started a project that included the Chassahowitzka swamp, but also other low-lying areas in Florida that I felt were vulnerable to development, storms, and sea level rise. But I kind of figured sea level rise was something that would be taking place a long time from now. And lo and behold, that actually started happening around 2014. The evidence of it was I can see now in some of my photographs from 2010, 2012. But in 2014, when I came to shoot there, I was mortified. There was widespread devastation, ghost forests already beginning. So I spent the last 7 years photographing this and this only, and started making side-by-side photographs showing some landscape that I'd shot in, let's say, 1986, and I would go and re-photograph the same spot. And now, 2020, 21, this year, last year, or for the last 6 or 8 years, so that in the exhibit here, I have a couple of side-by-side photographs of the same spot showing the devastation.
And I think that's so critical because humans, we are so bad at perceiving creeping threats, right? Things that take a very long time to show effects, but are ultimately devastating. That's why we have such an issue making real changes for the climate crisis that we're dealing with right now, because it happens over the course of decades or years, as opposed to like, it was a hurricane that we saw destroy something.
A one-off thing.
Right,
yeah.
exactly. Absolutely. So that you are documenting and showing side by side so you can see it together is absolutely critical in getting people to say, oh, this really is a problem. It is happening right now. This isn't a future problem. This is a now problem.
Exactly. The whole project was a surprise to me that this was happening, because in college a long time ago, it was something that would be in the future, and the future is now. This is happening. I have a book being published by the University of Georgia next fall, and since it's an academic press, I have to have scientists involved with real studies. And part of my talk yesterday at the gallery involved those didactics like graphs and aerial photography, and the scientists got even satellite photography tracing the increase in deforestation.
This is a really interesting conversation to have, because so often we have people who've been in their field come on the show who've been in the field for 30 or so years. And I like to ask the question, how have you seen this field or this place that you're working, how have you seen it change over the years? But for you, you're literally documenting it. Like, that is what you're doing. So it's interesting to hear you talk about just, that's basically what the conversation is. How has this landscape changed over the years?
Well, there are only 10 images of mine in the gallery. 2 of them are the diptychs, they're pairs of photographs. One of those 2 is from 1986, the before photograph, and the follow-up was done, I think, in 2020 or 2021, 46 years. And it's very straightforward. The book will have 15 of these side-by-side diptychs, and has 80 some odd images. A lot of them are older photographs from my archives that aren't paired up. They're just showing what the before looked like. Lush, primeval, very dense, ferns and bromeliads hanging off of trees, and just a lot of wildlife. And now it's a barren, and very few trees left. If you go very close to the springs, you will see somewhat what it looked like, but the water is not bright, brilliant blue like it was 30 years ago. The aquifer is now having salt water getting into it. So
that's a big problem.
That's a big problem. And it's happening. Another thing that's getting into the water is nitrates from fertilizer from places like The Villages, which is a big active adult retirement community that has 50 golf courses, and it's on the same
oh my gosh
spring shed, the same. If when they throw their fertilizer in, it goes into the aquifer and creates a lot of algae, toxic algae, which then kills everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is your background? Did you train as a photographer in school, or is it something that...
All I know how to do. I've been doing it. Recently someone said, how long have you been doing this in general? And I said, well, I got a camera from my mother, a good 35 millimeter camera in 1972 for a birthday, which I won't calculate. And went off to college. When I finished college in Florida, I went to New York City and lived and worked there until 2014. And I have photographed a lot in Florida over the years. And like I said, this was a favorite project because it was so lush and beautiful and unusual. There weren't a lot of places with this, but I'm a landscape photographer. Yeah. And I shoot black and white film.
So as a completely personal aside, I was the last class at my high school to learn on 35 millimeter film. Our photography I'm not a photographer by trade or professional or anything, but I do like taking pictures.
Mhm.
And I learned with a darkroom and enlargers and like all of that. And I really wish that there was a place that I could do that as a hobby still, because I really enjoy the medium of analog 35 millimeter. It's very different to me from a SD card that I can put 1,500 shots on. I have to be way less calculating about it. Do you still shoot 35 millimeter, or do you shoot digital or a blend?
I shoot medium format.
Okay.
So I've got used Hasselblad that I bought. We're going to geek out here a little. Okay.
A little bit. Do it.
I have used medium format camera. It happens to be a Hasselblad. They're very good cameras. And a bag full of lenses. And I learned very quickly that I needed to shoot high-speed film in order to hand hold the heavy Hasselblad camera. So I have in the canoe with me a dry box, and in there is the camera bag, and it's got an array of film for some when I need a tripod and some when I'm shooting handheld from the canoe. It doesn't matter what you shoot, I don't really think, but this is what I'm comfortable with, and it's what I've been doing for 50 years. I know how to shoot digitally. I don't enjoy it as much, and I'll be teaching a landscape class at Penland later. Actually, it's next month, and I'll be teaching both. I taught both in New York at the International Center of Photography, but landscape is landscape. But this is what I prefer, and the only time I break out 35 millimeter cameras now is when I'm reshooting a scene. If you go to the exhibit at the Do Good Fund, you'll see a side-by-side, a diptych, and the original was shot in, what did I guess, 1986, with a Nikon. And when I went down to reshoot that, I had that same old Nikon cleaned and adjusted and checked and shot with it in 2020.
That's super cool. That's amazing. I don't know. There's so much more that goes into a photograph than the image that, the final image that you see. You're saying that you have 10 images on display here. That's 10 times that you push the shutter button, but it is also so many more times that you spent. And these are just the 10 that you wanted to put on display.
They asked me, the Do Good Fund asked me several months ago to submit work. They wanted to have my work on exhibit during the Nature Now Festival, and I was pleased. I had been here in November of last year and met the folks who run this. And I sent them probably 20 or 30 images and let them decide. They asked for a selection, and these are the ones that they wanted.
That's awesome.
I sent them what I liked and what I thought would be appealing to this audience.
So, 2 questions. How do you choose where you shoot? And so you've been shooting the same area for 30 years or so, you've said? 30.
When it comes to the diptych, the rephotographic diptychs, the oldest shots, I think, are 1986.
Okay.
But I've been working on this project about the devastation, the ecosystem loss, since 2014.
Okay. So how did you decide on this location? Did someone tell you like, hey, this would be a great place? Or did you just happen?
I've been going there since 1977.
Oh, okay.
A friend of mine asked my brother and me if we wanted to go fishing. He said, there's this cool place a couple hours up the road. And we went, and I'd never seen a wetlands like this. It's springs coming up out of the earth and going through hardwood hammocks and out into mixed brackish situation, and then on out into the Gulf of Mexico. And it was gorgeous. I didn't go up again in 1977. The next time I went was 1986. So I enjoyed it there, and had gone a few times, but then in 2004 I just committed to doing a project about the place, and then in 2014 I couldn't look away from what was happening. So I just focused on, as a friend calls it, the death and destruction.
Yeah, I'm sure after 10 years of that, you're like, well, I'm pretty committed to this now. And like I would feel like I have to see it through. So sounds like that's how you feel.
The interesting thing about when you draw it to a close is when you get a publishing deal, the time period closes and everything is at the publishers now. So nothing, if I were to go down and shoot tomorrow,
it won't make it in the book.
It won't make it in the book. I will probably continue to go there and add work to it because I'd like to tour the exhibit at museums, especially in the Southeast. And there's always more devastation to shoot. And I like going there.
Yeah.
A friend has a cabin and canoe, and that's what I spend my time in.
That's awesome. So is there a working title for the book, or is there a
Yes.
fun? So what is the title of the book?
An Unflinching Look.
Ooh, provocative.
Yeah. The book has a subtitle because that's what they need to have. That's not very specific.
Right.
So that's what I've called the project since the beginning. The subtitle is an Elegy for Wetlands.
Ooh.
So it's an unflinching look, : Elegy for Wetlands.
Awesome. If somebody wanted to see some of your work, somebody who's listening to the podcast right now, is there a link that we could drop in the show notes?
Yes, benjamindimmitt.com is my website, and Dimmitt is spelled Dimmitt.
So if you guys are listening and you wanted to check out some of Benjamin's work, scroll down to the show notes right now. You guys can click on that link. I'm going to put it right there so you can go straight from listening to this to seeing some of his work.
And the portfolio online is called An Unflinching Look.
Perfect.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing some of your works while it's here in town at the Do Good Fund and to seeing this book when it comes out. Really looking forward to that.
Me too. It's been a lot of work, and it's nice to have
imagine.
it in their hands now.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for being on the show with us today.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Conservation Connection.
If you enjoyed our podcast, go ahead and subscribe to make sure you catch every episode that we post.
We'd love to hear from you. So if you want to reach out, go to our website, lastchanceendeavors.com/contact and shoot us an email.
We love questions from our listeners, so if you heard something that you want to know more about, be sure to let us know.
If you've got a minute to spare, leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts will help other conservation-minded people find the show. We'd really appreciate it.
A big thanks to the people working to protect our planet, and a big thanks to you for listening. Don't forget to tune in next week.